one important fact I can quickly share with all of leaders, because there's a session which is on technology which is coming after. So we've been trending on, if you go on Twitter, and if you look at the trending part, IPN virtual conference is trending in India as a top 7th news right now. So there are over 300 million people which are actually reading about our conference as such. So it is among the top trends on Twitter as of now in India. You all can go and watch that as a trend story which we are creating. So not just 200 participants. Let me compliment all of you that we have been heard by almost 1 million or 200 million people for that matter. Okay, with that as a note, I now quickly, Raghav, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Lovely, good to see you. And I'm so sorry that I had to keep you waiting for this long. But I'm sure you must be listening in yourself that it is so difficult to step into a session and say, now stop it. No.
You have one of the hardest jobs. I do understand that as a moderator.
Sorry, Raghav, so sorry we kept you waiting, but over to you. And as I said, let me quickly formally introduce you. You need no introduction. You are a fairly visible name and known name in the industry. So Raghav Podar is a chairman of, if I may say, when I was speaking to a legacy institution of India, which dates back to year 1927, if I'm right, which I shared with Raghav that they'll be completing 100, which is a centenary year, 7 years down the line. So a lot of legacy there, and we would love to hear from you on the topic, which obviously you will deliberate on, but would love to hear a little more of possibly your educational journey of your group as well. I believe the group will tend to gain from that as well. Okay, over to you, Raghav. All yours.
Thank you, Gaurav. Pleasure to be here at the IPN network. Thanks for putting a little bit of pressure with the 300 million people not watching, but at least on seeing it somehow or the other. Anyways, my pleasure to be here. And yes, our journey at Podar, it's 93 years young, not 93 years old. We have Gandhiji as the first president of our trust, founder president of the trust. I like to tell my kids, all the students, that, I have Gandhiji's autograph, because he has the first minutes of the meeting that was signed by Gandhiji, Madan Mohan Malviya, Jamnalal Bajaj, and Nandilal Podar, my great-great-grandfather. I tell kids that, thank God, in a way, in a small way, that Gandhiji is not alive to be with you guys, because if he was with you, you all would not have asked for autograph. You all would have been too busy hounding him for selfies. So that's our dear selfie generation. Anyways, I'm going to start my session now. Thank you, Gaurav, and to the IPN team for having me here. It's my pleasure. I always enjoy addressing principals and educators who are passionate. So it's good to see a lot of passionate. I was seeing the chat and some of the comments going on for the earlier speakers. And I think the one most important thing that is required for an educator is passion. So thank you to all of you for being here. The topic, while it's about uncertainty to certainty, I would like to point out here that maybe we need to recalibrate that a little bit. Instead of uncertainty to certainty, we need to be talking about embracing uncertainty. The way we lead our lives, we have no idea how the next few years are going to turn out. If you think about it, today's children, by the time they grow up and they reach their adult lives, they are not even going to have the jobs. They're not even going to exist, those jobs. Today's kids, they say 65% or 2/3 of the jobs will not exist by the time they grow up. We are preparing children for jobs that don't exist yet. They say the top 10 most in-demand jobs did not exist 6 years ago. So we are preparing children for these jobs that don't exist yet. They're going to be solving problems that we don't even know are problems yet by using technologies that haven't even been invented yet. And here we are as educators trying to get our children ready for their lives 20, 30, 40 years from now, when we don't know what the next 2 months are going to look like. That uncertainty, that unknown is the beauty of life. That's how life unfolds. And we can never be certain about anything in life, except that all of us will go one day. That's the only certainty we all know. But in life, the most beautiful thing is the uncertainty. We need to be able to, one, embrace that uncertainty, and two, get our children to have those life skills, equip our children with the life skills that they will require to tackle their life's challenges head on. We don't know what those challenges are going to be, but if we can equip them with those skills, they will be able to tackle their life's challenges head on. Now, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that the way this global pandemic has hit us, it's transformed the way that education is being delivered in classrooms or virtual classrooms across the world. More importantly, though, is the purpose aligned with the way these trends are evolving, with the way the trends are emerging? In this hot pursuit of Google Hangouts and Zoom and Microsoft Teams, Twiddler, iDrew, Coursera, all these wonderful online platforms, have we missed the woods for the trees? Now, it's not a question of if, but when at least some of these technologies will become mainstream in classrooms across the world. Why do I say that? Because when the normal arises after this corona is over, it's going to be a new normal. It's not going to be the same old traditional normal. We are going to arise into a new normal of having online education as well as brick and mortar traditional education, what some call blended learning or hybrid learning, or some are calling it phygital, physical and digital. That's what the new normal is going to arise. But the fundamental question still lies is in, are we serving the purpose of 21st century learners? Or are we just finding fancier ways of lesson delivery through e-pedagogues? Being thrust into this unprecedented situation has given each one of us a challenge, but each challenge is an opportunity for us if we make use of that opportunity. This is that opportunity for us to ensure that our children truly develop those 21st century skills that are required to be brought out in them. What are those 21st century skills? All of us agree upon communication, critical thinking, collaboration, teamwork, problem solving, analytical thinking, the ability to cope with limited resources, adaptability, flexibility, resilience. Which of these 21st century skills do our exams test and measure? Resilience, adaptability, flexibility? No, they don't. This is the time as educators we need to ensure that these 21st century skills, ability to cope with limited resources, we have been thrust into that situation. It's such a great opportunity for us to be able to bring that out in our children. If we don't, and we focus only on your academic, I'm not saying academics is not important, but it cannot be your only spotlight. The purpose of education is not only academics. It isn't only marks. It's developing the 21st century skills that we require in our students so that they can tackle those life challenges head on. A course correction is required at a time when these trends are still evolving, when they're still forming, because we can ill afford another education system that tests students in and prepares students for skills that they won't require in their lifetimes. Now, what are the latest buzzwords? You know, this entire April month, apart from virtual classes, and I must here point out that a lot of commendation to all the teachers, to all the educators who had literally 2, 3, 4, 5 days before they went live with virtual classes. And what a great job all of us educators have done who have gone live with virtual classes. Somebody can't hear me? If you can hear me, can you put your thumbs up, please? Somebody's pointed out that they can't hear. Am I not audible?
No, you're perfect. Perfect. I think there's a problem.
Sorry, man, you're going to have to check your own connection.
Yeah,
because I am audible to the rest.
At mine, you're perfect. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to continue. Yeah. And that's the beauty of a technical class, a virtual class. Anyways, so what are these latest buzzwords or obsessions? You know, everyone is in these education circles, in your WhatsApp groups, in webinars, in e-conferences. Everyone is talking about, you know, Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams, Zoom bombing, Twiddler, iDrew, Coursera, exam.net, etc., etc. And is that where the focus should lie? Now, in today's children's parlance, they would call it that a lot of schools are getting onto this technology bandwagon out of FOMO. What is FOMO? Fear of missing out. That's what kids call FOMO. A lot of schools are getting into this technology bandwagon just for FOMO. Why? Because everyone else is doing it. How can I not be doing it? It's good if you're doing virtual classes, but you have to understand the purpose and value of virtual classes is not brought out because others are doing it. That's why I have to do it. It will be brought out if you can truly take your virtual classes to the next level, which I will talk about a little bit later in my presentation. Now, Finland, all of you all are educators. Everyone knows Finland is one of the top performing education systems of the world. A lot of people look up to Finland and try to gain at least some of their best practices. I've studied the Finnish system of education for the last 4 or 5 years, gone and visited inside Finland for many cities, many weeks, met with the National Ministry of Education, spoken to teachers, sat inside classrooms. I was talking to this one principal in a city called Jyväskylä in central Finland. And I was asking him, this is obviously pre-COVID, how come you all don't focus that much on EdTech as the remaining European counterparts? And yet you all tend to be really good at it. So he said, Raghav, why should I show my children the different kind of berries on a screen when I can just go outside and show them in real life? While it was a limited point, his message was loud and clear. Yet, we are in that situation today where we can't take them outside and show them in real life. So that optimal utilization of your technology online platform for the right reasons is what is critical. So many are obsessively running behind this technology to get onto the technology bandwagon just for that sake, without understanding what is its true purpose and value to bring out the beauty of that virtual lesson. Does anyone know what nomophobia is? Nomophobia, and you can put it up into the chat box because we won't have the mics going. Nomophobia is no mobile phobia. Do you know how you feel when your batteries are 3% or 4%? You get that tension, stress, you get anxiety. Or maybe if you put your phone to charge at night and you woke up and it didn't charge and it's only at again 2 or 3%. Your day only starts with tension. Oh my God, how am I going to get through my entire day with only 3% battery? My dear friend, you might be having nomophobia. A lot of parents come and ask me this, and there's a lot of parents who are too worried about screen time. I tell parents that what is the correct screen time? There is no one correct answer. The correct screen time is one. Instead of talking about the quantity of screen time, talk about the quality of screen time. When a parent takes their child to a theater and watches a 3.5-hour movie of some hero bashing up somebody else, that time nobody talks about screen time. And what do? They hand a tub of popcorn, salty popcorn to that child and say, eat the popcorn because he'll stay quiet. Do you know the amount of salt in that popcorn is the amount of salt a child needs for one entire week in a child's diet? So we have to focus on the quality of screen time rather than just the quantity, first of all. Now, I tell parents that when your child starts replacing football between his feet with football between his thumbs, that's when you know you have a problem. You need to, as an educator, introspect and answer 2 very critical questions. 1, is my lesson delivery improving? And 2, is my learning outcome being enhanced of my students? If the answer is yes to both of those questions, then you get into the focus area of this online learning or Quidla, iDrew, Google Hangout, Teams, whatever it is. Understand why you are doing it. And it's not just to keep your parents happy. Your parents, there will be some who will always be happy and there will be some who will always be unhappy. The idea is you have to be true to your profession, to your passion, to your conscience. And that is bringing out these 21st century skills in our students. How are you going to then, if you've decided you want to do this and you're very passionate, you still have to build buy-in into your vision with all the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Your management, the trustees, the principal group, the leadership team, the teachers, and definitely the students and the parents. Don't think that if you have a passion and if it's not infectious, if you are not able to infect the others with the passion that you have for this virtual classes, that virtual class within a period of 1 month or 2 months will fall flat on its face. Why? Because it will be a honeymoon period. There's so many classes you see, and the first month, 2 months, 3 months, people are so excited about it. What happens after that? It becomes old, boring, nominal, monotonous. Nobody is interested to learn more. You, my dear teachers, my dear educators, need to focus on building heuristic learning in your students. What is heuristic learning? Heuristic learning is the highest form of learning that can occur in a child's brain, in a human's brain. Heuristic learning simply means the ability to be a self-led, self-directed, self-owned learning. I've seen so many teachers who will, tell me, sir, you don't know, we make our class interactive. It's not only lecture mode. We allow the children to ask questions on the chat box. Yes, that's good, but that's still the smallest, most basic, nascent way of bringing out the true engagement in a child. You need to let your child be the owner of their learning. Give your child a project, give your child a research assignment, give your child some time to actually practice, and then put them up on stage. On stage means this virtual stage. Let them present to the class. Let them take a lesson. What's the problem? Oh, he may not be able to, he may be nervous. So what? Are you not nervous when you go and talk in front of 1,000 people? These are the skills we want to build in our children. The ability to be resilient. Yes, the child will fail. He may make a mistake. He will stub his toe in his class if he's giving it to the other children. But what happens after that? He knows how to dust himself off and get up and keep moving ahead, progressing ahead. You have to let the child stick their neck out to be able to move ahead. People ask me, what's your favorite animal? And people generally say, tiger, lion, giraffe, rhinoceros, some really cheetah, really fast animal. And I tell them, my favorite animal is a turtle. Turtle, yes, you heard that right, a tortoise. Why? Because in order for a turtle to move ahead, it needs to stick its neck out. There are times that children will need to stick their neck out, gulp their fear, and take that leap of faith, that leap of courage to be able to go ahead and present to their class. And maybe you'll find some exceptional lessons that you can record and even share with other teachers. We want to build the ability of the children to perform at their best, not the ability of the teacher to perform at the best. The best teacher is not one who can teach very well, because the quality of teaching is only as good as the learning that happens in each child. The best teacher is one who can stay away and allow that learning to take place within a peer group, by a student. Those are the skills we need to build in the heuristic learning. Those are the 21st century skills we want to build. Now, all of you are educators here. What is education? Simple question. What is the purpose of education? In its most fundamental, most basic, what is the crux? Most fundamental, in one word, if you had to say in the chat box, what is the purpose of education? Only one word. The purpose of education in one word simply is learning. That's all education is. Why do parents send their children to your schools? Whether it's virtual, whether it's brick and mortar, so that the child can excel at what they are best in and maximize their inherent potential. So what is the role then of the educator in the 21st century? What is the role of education? Education, my dear team, my dear friends, is not just a transactional phenomenon. It isn't just about transacting curriculum. That's not what education is. Education is a relationship phenomenon. If a teacher is passionate, engaged, loving her lesson, she will definitely transport that vibe into the student, even virtually, and the children will be engaged and enjoy her lesson. This past 1 month, around 5 weeks, I've spent every single day spending at least 3 or 4 hours watching virtual lessons of different schools, Podar and non-Podar schools as well. And I must tell you, the best teacher I saw, the best, was a Gujarati teacher. And she was so passionate. And generally, principals will be like, Naini, let's focus on English, math, science, social science, the core subjects. A Gujarati teacher was like, sir, I'm going to take this class. And she took it so well. She enjoyed it. She was passionate. She had fun with it. And you could see the children. They were on her hand. They were on her palm because they were enjoying it. So my dear principals, if you want your children to enjoy and have engagement, you must have been taking attendance. You must have been checking what is the quality of the number of children joining. When you restart your virtual classes after the summer break, if you find your number of students, attendance falling, do think of what those reasons are. And don't try to convince yourself the reasons are bandwidth and device problems and all. Those are just excuses. Chances are, most probably, your teacher's lessons are not engaging enough. If your children are not engaged, if your teachers and if your parents are not engaged, they will not be logging into those lessons, and you will see a downward graph of the number of children attending your classes. So what's the role of the educator in the 21st century then? Is it one just to impart knowledge and information delivery process? No. The role of the educator in the 21st century has moved from that sage on the stage. Do you remember when we were children, we were growing up, our teachers would stand up on stage and blurt out these pearls of wisdom. And we would go and, take these lovely pearls of wisdom and take them into our brain. Today's kids they are in an era of information surplus. They already have access to limitless information on their click of a button through Google. The role of the educator has moved in the 21st century, and especially in this era of COVID, from that sage on the stage to a guide on the side, from being that gatekeeper, security guard of knowledge, to just being a facilitator of learning. That's all the role of an educator, is to facilitate learning. Does anyone know what endorphins are? On the chat box. What are endorphins? Endorphins are the chemicals or the hormones that your body releases when, yes, everyone's going hormones, yes. What kind of hormones are they?
Happy hormones.
Happy hormones, yes.
Happy hormones.
Happy hormones.
Yeah.
The feel good. You feel very confident. You know how you feel when you have a hormone rush, endorphin rush? You feel really good about yourself. Everything looks good in life. Where is the highest concentration of endorphin receptors found in the human body? Everyone got the answer, right? What are endorphins? They're the happy, good feeling, feel good hormone chemical. Where is the highest concentration of endorphin receptors found in the human body?
Brain.
Yes, that's correct. It's in the brain. Very good. Whoever said that.
Brain.
I said. Savita from the
I also said.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I feel like I'm in a class again where the students are all fighting on no, but I said it first. We are all children within ourselves, but yes, it's in the brain.
Yeah.
Now, since you got that answer right about
Child
the brain,
inside should not die ever.
Expressions will matter.
thank you. So where in the brain? Bilti Sabi says pituitary gland. No, it's not the pituitary gland. Which part of the brain has the highest concentration of endorphin receptors?
Is it hypothalamus?
Hypothalamus? No, it's not the prefrontal cortex. Pratika Jiswani, the prefrontal cortex is the front part of our brains, which controls it's like the CEO of our brain. It controls the executive functioning, decision making of your body. That's a prefrontal cortex. That's not where the highest concentration.
Left brain?
Midbrain, yes, it's at the back center, and I do think I saw somebody who got it right. I think it was Rajeshwari Sawant. Gaurava Yadav, you have to give a prize to Rajeshwari Sawant because she is the only one who got it right. Now, Preeta ma'am is also saying that hippocampus. It's the hippocampus. It's the hippocampus. Now, why am I giving you a biology lecture in the middle of a presentation about lockdown on learning or unlocking the true potential of virtual classes? I'm not giving you a biology lecture. I'm not a bio student myself. Yes, hippocampus, after the answer has already said, you can't just copy paste that answer and think you're going to get marks for it. But the hippocampus, it's the learning center of our brain, is called the hippocampus. So I told you, thank you. Thank you for unmuting me, Gaurav. I don't know why you muted the speaker, but the highest concentration of the endorphin receptors are found in the learning centers of your brain. What can you deduce? What can you analyze from that statement? The highest concentration of the feel-good chemical is found in the learning center of your brain. What it essentially means, because of the lack of time, I'm not making it too interactive because Gaurav is muting me then, I'm just joking. But the reason you can deduce from that is our brains are hardwired to find joy in learning. Yes, Mukta, when you learn, you feel happiness. I'll give you an example. How many of you checked your Facebook in the last 24 hours? Now I can't see the entire screen, but I'm guessing most of you would have checked your Facebook in the last 24 hours. Now let's say your news feed was filled with the same thing again and again and again and again. Would you still keep going back to your news feed on Facebook? No, you wouldn't. Now if it was filled with something new, but in a language that you didn't understand, would you still keep going back to it? No, you wouldn't. So if the way these endorphin receptors are released in your brain is when the learning that's taking place is on the periphery, on the boundary of your knowledge base. If it is too distant in a language that you don't understand, or if it's too monotonous, the same thing again and again and again, your endorphin receptors don't get released. If I ask you to stare at a blank white wall for 2 hours, either you have that option, or you can maybe read a magazine, you can go to a museum. Okay, now you can't go to a museum, you're not allowed to get out, but you can read a magazine, you can check your phone, you can watch TV, you can talk to your family, friends. Which one will you choose? You're not going to stare at a blank wall, white wall throughout, because those endorphins are not getting released. You're not going to find joy in anything. Yet, you find so many students in classrooms across the world who are bored out of their mind because that learning is too distant from their knowledge base or too monotonous. It's the same thing. How many of you are mothers here? Most of you are mothers. I must tell you this very funny story. I'm veering off a little bit. I was at a conference once and I asked the same question. How many of you are mothers here? And there were two gentlemen in the audience who were not listening to me, I guess. And they must have seen all these other ladies putting their hand up. So they also put their hand up. And I made sure to call them up on stage, that dear parent or dear gentleman, please tell me how you are a mother. It was a great fun joy activity that I had. But anyways, now dear mothers, how many of you taught your child how to hold your finger, to grasp your finger like that for the first time? Or did you teach your child how to crawl? Okay, now child, put your left elbow in front and now put your right knee in front and now move your hips ahead. You don't teach this to the child. How does the child learn this by themselves? The child's brain learns this through self-directed exploration and play. Our brains are hardwired to want to learn more and to find the joy in learning. I often ask the audiences in my education workshops, what do you think is the right mood for a child to be in when you're starting your lesson? And this is true even for virtual lessons. What do you think is the right mood for a child to be in? And the four most common answers I get are, child should not be hungry, child should not be sleepy, child should be happy. Yes, Priyanka Mehta says happy. And the child should be positive. None of those are the correct answer. Why? Because maybe the child is really happy, but he's happy because mango season's coming up and he's going to get to eat a lot of mangoes. Maybe he's positive, or maybe he's not hungry. How does that make your teaching result in better learning? What is your role as an educator? It's simply to be able to get into the brain of each child and to produce that learning happening. Not to make the child happy or positive or not hungry. That's not your role. So if you need a child's brain to be engaged when you're starting your lesson, you need to ensure that the child's brain is curious, challenged, and purpose. The three things: curious, challenged, and purpose. These are the three most important things your child's brain has to be in when starting your online or offline lesson. And what is purpose? You find so many teachers about purpose. What marks? Why are we learning this? You have to learn this for your exam. Don't you know? It's very important for your exam. Now you think about it. A child who does badly in maths twice or thrice, what does he start believing? I'm not good in maths. Maths is not for me. Numbers and me don't get along. That same child in the evening will go and play video games, fail each of those 15 times at a particular level, and still try on the 16th time. Have you ever heard a child say, video games are not for me. Video games and me don't get along. I'm a failure at video games. That doesn't ever happen. Why? Because there's still a challenge. There's still a purpose. The purpose cannot be marks. You ask children, learn this for your exam. Very important. How many of you are chemistry people here? Chemistry educators, or have been chemistry educators, or love chemistry? What is neutralization? Yes, Sangeeta, what is neutralization? How are we taught neutralization? Everybody write down on your board. Acid plus base
plus
equals
base,
to salt
salt
and
and
water.
water.
Salt.
Very good. And that's NaOH plus HCl equals to NaCl plus H2O.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. But have you balanced the equation? Please, for those of you who have not written this down, please write it. It's very important for your exam. Child listens to you. He learns it for his exam. After the exam, you ask him, what is that? I don't remember. Why don't you remember? You only told me to only remember it for the exam. The purpose of education isn't marks. It isn't that exam. It's building
Yes.
purpose in a lesson. Why does a child want to learn about neutralization? Why is it important? I'll give you exactly, they don't know the usage. I'll give you an example of English. How many English professors or English educators do I have out here? I've seen classes where teachers would enter, and this is not an Indian class as well. I'm talking about a class in Britain where I entered this class and, okay, children, I will teach you how to write a 200-word essay. I think second standard or third standard or something it was. I will teach you how to write a 200-word essay. And you, Sunanda, that is 3 pages for you. And you, Rajni, that's only 1.5 pages because you write very small. And Sunanda, you write very big. Now, what mood have you brought into that class? What mood, where is that child's brain? Is that child's brain interested? What's the purpose of your lesson? To teach you how to write a 200-word essay? I don't even know what the word essay means. Why would I want to know what this 200-word essay is? Alternatively, what you could do is, okay, children, how was your weekend? How did you enjoy this weekend? You watched a movie. Oh, wow, what movie? You watched that movie about Amir Khan and that little child, and he goes to boarding school. Tare Zameen Par. Oh, lovely. How sweet. What did you like about that movie? The acting, the songs, that Bum Bum Bole. How sweet. Did you like the story of that movie? Oh, you like the story. How would you like to learn how to write a film script one day, a story of a film, or maybe Harry Potter? Let me start with a simple 200-word story. I'll teach you how to write that, and one day maybe you will write the next film script. Maybe Amir Khan can act in your movie next when you're grown up. Or maybe Darshil Safari, that little boy who played that role. Much more purpose. Why is that child going to want to learn about your 200-word essay? Make sure you build purpose in that lesson, in the virtual lessons as well. Why do I have to learn this? Your role as an educator is simply to be able to spark that imagination and inquiry in a child's brain. Because once you do that, automatically, organically, the child's brain will learn. Our brains are hardwired to want to learn more and to want to know what's going on. We are the most curious species that ever has existed on this planet. We want to know what's happening in the moon. We want to know what the remaining teachers are gossiping about us as soon as we left the staff room. We are the most curious species. You just need to spark that imagination and inquiry in a child's brain and watch the learning take place organically. What is the general mood of a child before entering an exam? What is the scene that happens just outside an exam hall? Nervous, stress, anxiety, tension. Yes, everyone's saying that, anxiety, nervous, fear. And what is the typical scene outside that exam hall? Miss, 2 minutes, I'm just coming. I'm just finishing my last minute revision. I'm just coming in. The child with all that stress is coming in with this chemical called cortisol. Cortisol goes into the prefrontal cortex I told you about, the CEO of your brain, the decision maker of your brain, and reduces its ability to perform at its best. What is the point of stressing our children out with this cortisol and then saying that, why didn't you do well? The child will take 15-20 minutes to settle down in that paper because of that cortisol overdose. Please note, it's not cholesterol. Cholesterol is that you get when you eat fried and oily things. Cortisol on the prefrontal cortex. So make sure your children enter the exam hall, whether it's a physical exam hall, whether it's a virtual test, whether it's this time that we're going through of COVID. Make sure you are not anxious, you are not afraid, you are not tense, because if you are, that's what you're going to give to your children. Those vibes are picked up by a child like this. You have to display confidence, self-reliance, self-assured, and know that we will get through this. So make sure that the children are confident. Even when you do reopen your schools, make sure that you have confidence in what you're doing and don't be afraid, don't be anxiety. We will overcome the challenges that are there. What's the most favorite thing of Asian education systems? All of us are chasing, especially come March, all of us are going crazy, Feb, March. What are we all chasing throughout the year?
Raghav, last 3 minutes, please.
Yeah, marks, tests, scores. We're all running behind these tests, marks, scores. Now, what are tests? Tests are meant to be diagnostic. They're meant to diagnose the strengths and the weaknesses of the child so the teacher can adjust her lesson delivery accordingly. Yet tests and marks have become a measure, a way of putting a label on a student's forehead. Got 95, genius. 70, average. 40, oh my God, very poor. Or people even use pathetic terms and labels like duffer, stupid. Who are you to say that? Just what is that test measuring? For a large part, the test is only measuring the child's ability to memorize and regurgitate. In today's world, children already have access to limitless information on their fingertips. By the time they grow up, they will be auto-prompted with the information that they require for the next task. And yet here we as a country are running behind memorization and regurgitation. What is the point? In the 21st century, the world economy will not reward you for how much you know, for what you can do with what you know. Not for the amount of knowledge that you have, but for how you apply the knowledge that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful.
Raghav,
Very nice, sir.
lot of
Excellent, Raghav. Excellent.
window. All
Most related. Very good.
Thank you, sir. You rocked.
fantastic.
Excellent session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
Excellent session, sir. Excellent session.
Chaliye, अब
Thank you so much. Sir.
Excellent session, sir.
Very informative, Raghav.
Raghav, you
Stolen the
should,
station.
It was pleasure.
Wonderful.
Raghav, you should be a motivational speaker.
Correct. I agree.
But your
Thank you so much. That's very kind.
excellent.
No,
Your whole vision is excellent.
Raghav,
excellent.
you are a director of tea company.
Thanks, sir. It was wonderful.
He's the chairman of the company, sir.
Raghav, are you?
I'm the chief curiosity cultivator of my group.
That was humorous, really.
so much, sir.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
A wonderful deliberation, Raghav.
Well said, very well said.
You with us.
Very nice, sir. We enjoyed following the very
I'll again pardon myself by saying that we started a little late on the schedule, but we really covered it very well. Thank you very much, Raghav. Which is why I believe a
100 out of 100.
lot of people are messaging me on my window as well, stating the vision you hold for your organization is very, very phenomenal. So thank you very much. I mean, and
Thank you
I'm
so
not
much,
saying
Raghav, sir.
testimony in front of the school leaders. So thank you very
It's
much. So,
amazing.
Raghav, my only request with you will be that if you can join us for the 4:30 session, which I requested from you, which will be an open house largely, because I'm presuming we'll have a lot of questions. You may just come in for 10 minutes possibly and possibly step
I'll
out.
try my best.
Best.
As you know, I do have another virtual conference happening
Correct,
after
correct,
lunch.
correct.
So I'll
Try
try
it.
to get
I'll
in
only
that one
request
as
to
well.
try in, right? If you may.
I'll
if you
try my
can.
best.
Yeah, sure. Thank you
But
very
it was
much.
my pleasure talking to all the principals, and to all of you a happy Principals Day.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Thank you so much.
okay, dear school
Thank you,
leaders.
sir.
So
Very inspiring. Very
leaders,
Thank you,
Raghav.
sir.
Thank you very much, Raghav.
God bless
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you once again. Thank you.
Fantastic.